Here's something most people never stop to consider about having an exceptionally high IQ. Most assume it's purely an advantage, and in certain ways, it absolutely is. But here's the reality nobody discusses. For many highly intelligent individuals, the very cognitive abilities that set them apart also create a particular form of psychological burden that the average person rarely comprehends. Today, we're going to examine something that researchers in psychology and neuroscience have been investigating for years: the specific emotional and mental challenges that accompany high intelligence. Not to complain, not to boast, simply to honestly explore what it genuinely means to possess a mind that operates fundamentally differently. Struggle 1: the exhaustion of constant mental activity. Here's something you might not fully appreciate. The identical neural mechanisms that enable a highly intelligent person to solve intricate problems with remarkable depth are precisely the mechanisms that keep their mind racing at 3 in the morning, dissecting an interaction that happened days earlier. Studies in neuroscience indicate that individuals with superior intellectual abilities often demonstrate heightened activity in their default mode networks, the brain regions governing introspection and mental projection. Put simply, their minds resist shutting down. What appears to be excessive rumination from an external perspective is actually a brain perpetually constructing scenarios, challenging premises, and identifying connections even when no problem requires solving. Struggle 2: the challenge of authentic intellectual connection. This particular struggle is nuanced, yet profoundly impactful. Highly intelligent people frequently encounter genuine difficulty in forming deep social bonds, not due to lacking compassion or interpersonal abilities, but because conversations with real substance are exceptionally uncommon in their experience. When your mind naturally gravitates toward exploring abstract concepts, complex systems, or fundamental questions about human nature, superficial dialogue can feel almost physically uncomfortable. Researcher Letta Hollingworth, a pioneer in studying intellectual giftedness, observed that exceptionally intelligent individuals often experience what she termed the communication problem, the disconnect between their internal thought processes and what typical social interaction permits them to express. The consequence is a persistent, quiet sense of isolation even when surrounded by others. Struggle 3: the tension between perfectionism and profound self-questioning. Consider this carefully. Many individuals with high IQs simultaneously function as their most severe critics while placing enormous pressure on themselves. Mental health professionals identify this as impostor syndrome. However, for intellectually gifted people, it frequently goes much deeper because they can perceive every weakness in their reasoning, every limitation in their understanding, every conceivable way their conclusions might be incorrect. They often experience more self-doubt than individuals with less reflective capacity. Intelligence, counterintuitively, can heighten your awareness of your own ignorance, and that awareness, though intellectually valuable, can gradually undermine self-assurance. Struggle 4: a unique and neurologically distinct form of boredom. This is where the psychology becomes particularly fascinating. Evidence suggests that highly intelligent individuals require substantially greater cognitive engagement to maintain interest. When that engagement is absent, they don't simply feel uninterested, they experience something closer to neurological discomfort. Research examining dopamine regulation indicates that intelligent people may possess reward pathways that respond weakly to conventional stimulation. This means routine activities, repetitive contexts, or intellectually unstimulating work can feel genuinely depleting rather than merely tedious. This explains why numerous brilliant individuals struggle within traditional structures like standardized education, corporate hierarchies, or inflexible schedules. Not because they lack discipline, but because their brains are actively seeking a depth of engagement those environments cannot consistently offer. And here's something worth considering carefully. Do any of these patterns resonate with your own experience? Because the dynamics we're describing aren't merely theoretical constructs. They manifest quietly in daily existence, in how someone systematically avoids particular types of conversation, feels strangely detached even among familiar company, or remains awake deep into the night without obvious cause. If this is hitting different, subscribe right now, because 97% of people will watch this, feel seen for the first time in years, then scroll away and wonder why they're still stuck in surface-level conversations that drain them. Don't be that person. Struggle 5: perfectionism that becomes psychologically inescapable. Highly intelligent people often establish internal benchmarks for themselves that are objectively unattainable, not from arrogance, but because their minds can vividly construct the optimal result. And when actual outcomes inevitably diverge from that mental image, the psychological distance can feel substantial. Psychologists characterize this as the intersection of planning bias and elevated self-expectation. The intellect is sophisticated enough to imagine exceptional achievement, but real-world execution invariably involves obstacles, constraints, and compromise. For intelligent individuals, accepting adequate rather than excellent can represent a genuine mental struggle. Struggle 6. Acute awareness of contradiction and unfairness. Many highly intelligent people detect hypocrisy, logical flaws, and systemic injustices with almost painful acuity. What others might dismiss or justify, an intelligent mind frequently cannot ignore. This enhanced pattern detection, while cognitively advantageous, can render the world perpetually frustrating, sometimes emotionally draining. Studies in moral reasoning suggest that individuals with advanced analytical capacity often experience intensified emotional responses to perceived inequity, specifically because they comprehend its broader ramifications more completely. Struggle 7. The paradox of decision-making difficulty. This may be the most counterintuitive struggle, because conventional wisdom suggests intelligence simplifies choices. But intellectual capacity often complicates decisions. It expands the variables exponentially. A highly intelligent person can envision countless possibilities, numerous ramifications, multiple ways any choice could produce negative results. Decision scientists describe this phenomenon as analysis paralysis. The more comprehensively you can evaluate a situation, the more alternatives your mind constructs, and the more challenging it becomes to simply select one direction and move forward with conviction. Struggle 8. The relentless pursuit of existential meaning. Viktor Frankl, the renowned psychiatrist and concentration camp survivor, argued that humanity's fundamental drive is neither pleasure nor dominance, but purpose. And for highly intelligent individuals, this search typically manifests with particular intensity. Conventional existence, superficial achievement, or society's standard definitions of fulfillment often feel insufficient. Intelligent people tend to question purpose at depths that mainstream cultural narratives don't adequately address. This can generate authentic existential unease, a persistent sense that something fundamentally important remains perpetually just beyond grasp. Struggle 9. The isolation of chronic misunderstanding. Not obvious, dramatic isolation. Subtle, persistent isolation. The variety where you're entirely capable of social functioning, maintaining conversations, even generating laughter, yet you privately harbor thoughts and questions that seldom escape your internal dialogue. Psychologists researching intellectual exceptionalism consistently discover that this internal solitude represents one of the most frequently reported experiences among highly intelligent adults. It's not about feeling superior. It's simply the reality that when your cognitive processes differ fundamentally, discovering genuine comprehension from others requires considerable effort and often remains elusive. Here's the essential psychological insight from all of this. Intelligence is not a straightforward benefit. It represents a distinctive mode of experiencing reality, one that delivers authentic advantages and authentic difficulties. The same intellect that can navigate complex challenges is also the intellect that cannot cease analyzing, cannot easily find contentment, and cannot always locate the depth of discourse it seeks. Recognizing this doesn't eliminate the struggles, but it accomplishes something quietly transformative. It converts bewilderment into understanding. And for a mind perpetually searching for meaningful patterns, sometimes the most valuable pattern to discover is the one that finally makes sense of your own existence. And perhaps that understanding is sufficient to finally perceive yourself accurately. Not as excessive, not as inadequate, but as precisely the type of mind this world has always required, even when it doesn't fully understand what you carry. But listen, you're either going to subscribe and actually commit to understanding yourself at this level, or you're going to keep pretending those shallow self-help channels satisfy a mind like yours. We both know they don't. So stop lying to yourself and hit subscribe before you forget why you even watch this.